Now, as a highly creative, imaginative person, there are three different ideas, different patterns that fit together in a way that I think is important to understand, and I've only understood somewhat recently. The first idea is every system, every pattern is incorrect, is faulty, is inefficient, is wrong. It doesn't matter what the system is, it's wrong. Now, here's a good way to understand that in the language of geometry. We start with the one, the whole, the unbroken sphere, the unconscious, the endless possibility field. It's too big to deal with, so it's reduced through language, either mathematical language or verbal language, into a system. So if we divide it by 3, we can see this is our new system here, right? And what have we done? We've taken the endless whole, the boundless ecology, the sphere, the one, that turns gracefully, right? It's in a beautiful orbit. One thing flows effortlessly into another, the unbroken whole. Now, when we divide it into 3, we take this nice, graceful wheel, and this is no fun to drive in, right? If you put 4 of these on a car, it's a bumpy road. So the first thing that happens when you reduce the one into a system of any kind is the level of friction goes up. And there's 2 forms of friction. As it rotates, the missing piece is, it's a bumpy ride. But the other form of friction is an innate civil war. Now, this triangle captures and takes care of, so to speak, the area of space inside the triangle, right? So we could say that it's a good system for what's in the triangle. But anytime you refract the one with language into a system, you have anomalous data, outsiders, outcasts, outlaws. You have the things that don't fit in the system, and they're out here. Now, it is the nature of those elements within the psyche, within the one, that are outcast from a system to undermine the system, and thus begins the war. All of the parts of you that don't fit into your image of yourself are going to try and undermine the system you've created of your image of yourself. Why? Because it is a toxic system to them. If you create wealth for, let's say, 70% of the population, but in doing so create poverty and misery and trauma for 20% or 30% of the system, the 20 or 30% that are not benefited by the system, it is the nature of the outcast elements of reality to undermine the reality system that outcast them. So you create civil war. So that's the first truth. The second truth is that you need a system, meaning your and my conscious mind is so crude in relationship to the complexity of all that is, that we need to deal with a model of reality that is not real, that is the dumbed-down version. We need to deal with the dumbed-down version of reality. We need a system. It's really a system of thinking, a system of feeling, a system of doing. We need an identity, a pattern we can identify with. Now, the pattern is faulty, but we need a pattern. And so the next truth is you don't destroy a system, in this case, the triangle, unless and until you are able and willing to replace it with a more complex, more graceful system. Now, the way this works mathematically, like a sphere is an infinite number of points, so the more complex the system, the more graceful its potential, right? So a triangle is going to be a very bumpy ride. A square is going to be less bumpy. If we could turn the square into an 8-sided structure, it's even less bumpy, right? So it's becoming more complex. If you maintain symmetry, the more complex the system, the more graceful the system. The more complex the system, if you maintain symmetry, like in this case, we're taking each quarter of the whole simultaneously as we create 4. We're not doing 4 points all on one side of reality. If we maintain symmetry within the sphere and move towards complexity, we get more grace for a couple of reasons. One, the ride is less bumpy as we go around, but the other reason is there's less outcasts, right? Remember, the war within reality, within self, is created by the conscious mind that outcasts portions of itself, portions of reality, with its system, right? So as the system becomes more and more complex, there's more and more of the system, more and more of reality included in it, and there's less outcast that's trying to undermine it. So all systems are flawed. We need systems in order to retain a relationship with our conscious mind. And so we don't destroy, we don't rebel. For example, we all have crappy parents. We have a crappy system that we're born into. Crappy family, crappy parents, crappy culture, you name it. It's full of shit. Not literally, that's a metaphor that is actually a representation of just how crappy the system is. Like, shit is the source of all life, but it's a curse word in a dysfunctional system. So the thing is, though, you don't throw out your family before it gives birth to you, before it's raised you to a point. You don't leave the family until you can create a better system outside of the family. You don't leave your culture unless you can co-create a better culture outside that transcends your culture, which leads to the final point in this process, the network effect. Everything around us in the traditional culture is at best 10% of its potential. You can take the education system, the political system, the justice system, a little irony around that, right? The tax system, right? The immigration system, the military system, the corporate system. You take any system within your cult, and it's operating at 10% of what could easily be imagined by a competent member within that system. Here's the problem. You can 10x a system in your mind. You can create a way of relating, and the relational system in our cult is a joke. And you can create a 10x superior protocol, meaning it's more intelligent, it delivers more well-being, consumes less energy. So you now have a 10x system. Now, if you think of the computer analogy, you have, statistically speaking, you have Apple and its operating system, you have Microsoft and its operating system. You have these two operating systems. And Apple has a better operating system than Microsoft, but it has a smaller network. And this was more so before, right? And what that means is if you develop software for the crappy system, Windows, then 75% of people are going to use it. I think at one point it was like 93% of the population would use it. If you developed software for the better operating system, you have a distinct minority. You have 7% of the population. Now, when you're dealing with a global population, that's fine. But if you're an individual, a creator, and you design a new USB port, right? USB-A is clunky, right? It's clunky, right? You have to turn it the right way. If you turn it the other way, it doesn't go in. You're tired of USB-A. You want to save natural resources. You want to increase the speed. You want to make sure it goes in every time. You want it to be a power plug and a data transfer. Like, you want this thing to be efficient. You want a 10x better USB. And so you create USB-C. You create it, you put a port in your computer, you plug your USB-C mouse in, and voila, right? It's wonderful. The trouble is, you belong to a network of one. You have the best USB technology on the planet, but you have only one computer to plug it into. If you try and sell USB-C mice to people who do not have a USB-C port in their computer, you will fail. You do fail, right? And so this is something I want you to understand, Dane, as a younger version of you. It's not hard for you to see that the system is 90% inefficient, right? Bravo, that's step one. It is important to understand that the purpose of seeing that is not to destroy systems and go into chaos, but to create a 10x better system. Now, relationships have always been the most important area for you because they're the hardest and thus they're the most fulfilling. Meeting the need for love and belonging is the greatest challenge, the biggest source of joy and fulfillment when we succeed, the biggest source of pain, trauma, misery, frustration when we fail. Right? So that's kind of the stage. So we have iterated a variety of cultural protocols, of social protocols that have a 5 to 10x better result for the energy invested. But here's the problem. Doing this as a network of one, right? Here's the thing that we've run into for now more than a decade. When nobody knows how to use the USB-C port, it doesn't matter how good it is, right? So what I'm working on right now is community projects with groups of 100 people or more in that size range. So in other words, the more valuable, the more people that are in a system, the more valuable it is. Why is English such a powerful system? It's not because it is a better language. There are numbers of languages that have superior benefits to English in different areas, right? Particularly emotionally, English is a very weak language. And yet it has, more than 1 billion people using it. And as such, it is one of the most potent network, meaning you will find most of the money, most of the influence on the planet today is spoken with people within the English language. So even though it may be a crappy language, and the way of using it may be even worse, it's not useful to invent a better language unless you can create a network of people. And what I want to let you know is that we have created a number of microcultures with one woman. Frankly, it's, every now and again there's been a male friend in there, but one woman at a time has learned the new protocol. So now the USB-C port goes into my computer, it goes into her computer, and there is a definite blossoming of the results, the fruits of that. But to learn an entirely new language just to plug into one of two computers, it's so inefficient to learn the new language when it can only be spoken to a few people, that it becomes questionably valuable in its net energy expenditure. And so what I want to say is that in going forward, that these experiments, that these research projects, that these successes with individuals are important in terms of a proof of concept, a prototype. But they don't become useful in a larger sense unless you can show groups of 100 people. And that's the goal. Look at Dunbar's law and the maximum size of groups, etc. If you can get a community of 100 people using your operating systems using your protocols, developing an operating system, that is worth the effort to adjust for you, but also for other people, right? And so, in summary, all systems are false. We need systems. Don't throw away a corrupt, a rotten system until you can envision and are willing to create the new order, the new system. And 10x improvements in systems are available everywhere, but the best technology on Earth only becomes valuable if you can generate a network of people who all voluntarily maintain and agree to iterate the system. So I'll leave you with that.